let's go to Mary Kay Cabot. Mary Kay joins us on the River Islands guest line. All guests on 95.7 The Game appear on the River Islands guest line. Is it a time for you to discover the islands, River Islands, and Lathrop? Mary Kay, thanks so much for coming on. Once again, we always talk to you whenever something happens with the Cleveland teams out there. Of course, Mary Kay with the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and you wrote an article yesterday. I said, we got to get Mary Kay back on because you're tapped in from the Cleveland perspective here. So good morning to you. Thanks for joining us here on the Morning Roast. Joe Shaska, the Butcher, and Bonte Hill. So the Browns, let's just start here. The Browns being interested in Brandon Aiyuk and possibly trading Amari Cooper. I want to start with Cooper here. What's the impasse with Amari Cooper and the Cleveland Browns right now?
There is no impasse between Amari Cooper and the Cleveland Browns right now. Amari is in good standing with the Cleveland Browns because they restructured his contract. Mm-hmm. He's making his $20 million base, which is now fully guaranteed. That was one of the changes in the restructure, so that he didn't have to go into camp without a guaranteed contract. And then they gave him $5 million more in incentives that he should be able to make based on his previous production. So he basically got a $5 million raise come in this season, and then they were planning to probably revisit an extension sometime during the season, maybe after the season. Amari is loved here, so let's make no mistake about that. The Browns love him. He loves being here. He said the other day, last week, that he would love to finish his career here. But the problem is, over the long haul, the Browns probably don't want to pay him, more than the $25 million he's set to make this season. And if they're going to invest that kind of money, sort of close to at least the $30 million threshold that these elite receivers are making now, they would rather do so with a long-term contract for a young player who's in his prime at the age of 26. Now, why does that not make sense for the 49ers to do? Well, they've got a lot of big salaries. They've got a lot of offensive weapons that they're paying. And if they don't want to go to 30 or higher than 30 for Brandon Aiyuk, then maybe it makes sense for them to do this if they got something in return that could be a plug-and-play situation for them. And that's what Amari would be. He's tremendous. He hasn't lost a step, and he could step right in there and be a tremendous weapon for Brock Purdy.
Okay, so a lot of our audience isn't as familiar with like Cleveland's cap situation, and I know this. We're all learning who knows with the cap, right? Everybody's wants new money, and I have no idea what's what. But my understanding was that Cleveland doesn't have a lot of wiggle room financially because of the Deshaun deal, nor do they have picks. How would they have money to trade for Aiyuk and pay him?
Well, because first of all, if you're trading Amari Cooper, then you are lopping that $20 million off of your salary cap right there. I think his cap charge this year is something like 23 or something like that. So you're creating your cap space there. And then when it comes to signing a young player like that to a long-term contract, there are many ways to do that. You can restructure other guys. You can let go of maybe some older players who have higher salaries. Long-term, that's not going to be an issue. The Browns are probably some of the best in the NFL at capology. They're tremendous in that regard. So if they like Brandon Aiyuk and they want him around here for the next 5 years, they'll find a way to pay him.
Mary Kay Cabot here on the Morning Roast on 95.7 Game, courtesy of the River Islands guest line. So Brandon Aiyuk here, from what you're hearing around the league, you don't believe the 49ers. Do you believe the 49ers will end up trading Brandon Aiyuk? Because out here in this market, we're thinking, okay, he's holding it in training camp. He's on the field. He's not practicing. And this is how the 49ers have done business for the most part with guys like Fred Warner, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. They've waited. Heck, Nick Bosa last year didn't come until 3 days before the Pittsburgh Steelers game. However, this season, they did extend Christian McCaffrey in the spring. And, Christian McCaffrey is one of the best players in the league. We get that Offensive Player of the Year in the NFL. But nationally, I don't know. It feels like out here we underrate Brandon Aiyuk. How do you view Brandon Aiyuk? And do you think people in Cleveland will warm up to a guy like Brandon Aiyuk?
Yeah, I think they would. I think that a young receiver like that in this system, a receiver-friendly system, with a quarterback like Deshaun Watson who's going to get him the ball early and often, I think he would flourish here. He might get even more targets because I think San Francisco might have even a few more weapons than the Browns do and utilize them a little bit differently. But I'm not saying that this is going to happen. Yeah. I'm just saying that it actually is somewhat of a possibility now, where it didn't seem possible in the beginning because no one could really imagine the 49ers parting with him. Why would you let go of your number one receiver in the prime of his career? It really kind of comes down to a financial decision. If he's going to hold out, if he's going to be a distraction in this high-stakes year for the 49ers, maybe it's better for them to move forward, bring in a receiver, an elite receiver like Amari.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't miss a beat or a step this season. Amari, by the way, he adjusted to 4 different quarterbacks last year for the Cleveland Browns and had no problem doing that whatsoever. And these were different. The ball was coming in so differently with some of these quarterbacks that some guys could not adjust to it, but Amari could. He always says it doesn't matter who's throwing the ball to him. It's his job to catch it, and he's kind of lived by that credo. So he would have no problem adjusting to Brock Purdy whatsoever. Those guys wouldn't have any trouble getting their timing and their chemistry down and all those kind of things. It's really just a matter of if the 49ers have drawn sort of a line in the sand on the salary. The Browns apparently are willing to go higher than that, and it really comes down to the financial aspect of it and then the long-term picture.
Mary Kay, I wonder, because I know you I asked you about Cooper to start the interview, and you mentioned how he would love to retire in Cleveland, Ohio or whatnot. Have you ever discussed his days with the Oakland Raiders with Amari Cooper? Because he was in the Bay Area. They were right. I went to a lot of those games, watched them, and there were some mixed feelings there with Amari Cooper and the Oakland Raiders, and obviously he gets traded to Dallas. Have you ever spoken to him about his time in the Bay Area?
No, I really haven't spent a lot of time talking about that. I think more so than anything because he had just come off a stint with the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe we were a little focused on what happened there and why Jerry was willing to give him up. But I have found Amari to be just a fantastic teammate, great hands, great route runner. The players love him here. The team loves him. So this is not a situation of a disgruntled receiver. It really would be more of a one-on-one swap. Well, plus picks coming from the Browns too, but it would be a swap of 2 really, really good receivers.
Would Amari Cooper want an extension immediately if he were traded? I'm sure he wants one in Cleveland, right?
Well, I think that's something that could be obviously worked out. He could either try to do the extension now or bet on himself a little bit and see what kind of season he has. If he goes out and makes his 6th Pro Bowl and has another 1,200-yard season, then the price goes up a little bit on Amari Cooper, and he can get himself into the conversation with what these other elite receivers are being paid right now. So there's plenty of different ways to go about that. And if the 49ers didn't want to pay what Amari is going to maybe want when he hits free agency or whatever the case may be, then maybe Amari can get that from someone else. So I think there's a lot of different ways you could go about this. But once again, maybe everything will work out between the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk. Maybe this situation with the Browns will end up being good leverage for him that he can parlay into a nice raise and a nice extension and a contract from the 49ers. Maybe it will turn into a swap of these receivers and some picks.
Mary Kay, from your vantage point, do you feel like the Niners or Brandon Aiyuk have had any missteps along the way? Like from afar, because we're inside the bubble and people are like, the player's too greedy. The Niners waited, and it felt like all this wide receiver money was coming off the board and they missed their window. Do you think that they've misplayed this, either side?
You know what? I don't know it as closely as I know the Browns situation, so I really don't know. But, I mean, what it looked like the other day on video when I saw Brandon showing up at practice, it looked like there were good feelings between him and John Lynch and him and Kyle Shanahan. You don't have those kind of embraces and handshakes if there's really bad blood between a player and a coach or a player in a front office. I mean, I've seen plenty of times where in a hold-in, it's acrimonious, and you just don't have those kind of gestures.
Mary Kay, before we let you go, what kind of picks do you think the Browns, if this deal did go down, a pick, obviously player for player, Amari Cooper and Brandon Aiyuk, very comparable players here, Mary Kay, but the picks, if Cleveland did send the picks to the 49ers, and I know you're not saying this will happen, we understand that, but what do you think the compensation in terms of draft picks would be?
Well, if Amari is going, then I don't see the Browns giving up their first-round pick. They're not going to want to do that. They haven't had a first-round pick in 3 years from the Deshaun Watson trade. So that one is probably staying here. Mm-hmm. I would say that the starting point then would be the second-round pick, and then maybe you would ask for a few other things for your former first-rounder in addition to Amari. I would probably go with maybe a mid-round pick or two.
Wow. Expectations high in Cleveland, Mary Kay? They got a lot of talent out there.
Yeah, maybe these two teams will meet in the Super Bowl. You never know.
Oh, maybe we'll have some drinks on Bourbon Street, Mary Kay.
Sounds good to me.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot. Thank you so much for the time, man. We really appreciate it.